In the lush, mist-covered jungles of Costa Rica, hidden beneath layers of thyme and vegetation, lie hundreds of perfectly carved stone spheres. Some are no larger than a child's fist, while others weigh more than 16 tons, standing as silent guardians of an enigma that refuses to be solved. Who carved them? Why were they created? And perhaps most importantly, what ancient knowledge did their makers carry that has now been lost to us? Archaeologists call them Las Bolas, the balls. They are scattered across riverbanks, buried beneath centuries of soil, and even aligned in curious patterns on ancient plazas. To the untrained eye, they might look like simple stones, but when you see their perfect symmetry, when you realize they were shaped long before modern tools existed, you understand. These are not accidents of nature. These are deliberate, intentional creations, and their purpose is still cloaked in mystery. Imagine walking through the rainforest thousands of years ago and stumbling upon a massive stone sphere gleaming in the sunlight, an object so geometrically precise it almost feels alien. Did they mark the boundaries of kingdoms? Or they symbols of power? Or perhaps maps of the stars, reflecting a cosmic order that prehistoric humans once understood far better than we do today? The story of the Costa Rican spheres is not just about archaeology. It is about the whispers of a lost civilization, the ingenuity of human evolution, and the haunting possibility that much of our history has slipped through our fingers. As we unravel this mystery, we will not only explore the stones themselves, but also the people who shaped them, the myths that surround them, and the lessons they may still hold for us in the modern age. This is the mystery of the Costa Rican spheres. The story of Costa Rica's mysterious stone spheres begins in the early 20th century, not with an archaeologist searching for traces of a lost civilization, but with fruit companies expanding their plantations. In the 1930s, the United Fruit Company began clearing vast tracts of the dense rainforest in the Diquís Delta to make way for banana crops. Bulldozers ripped through the land, tearing away centuries of untouched soil. And then, as if nature itself was revealing a secret, massive stone orbs began rolling out of the ground. Workers were stunned. These weren't jagged boulders or random rocks. They were nearly perfect spheres, polished and carved with incredible precision. Some men, driven by rumors of hidden gold, blasted the stones open with dynamite, hoping to find treasures inside. Nothing was ever found. All they had destroyed were solid masses of stone, crafted with skill and intention, but hiding no material wealth. Archaeologists soon took notice. The spheres were cataloged and measured, and scholars realized the scale of the phenomenon. Hundreds of these objects existed, scattered across the landscape, some grouped in clusters, others carefully aligned in geometric or astronomical patterns. The largest spheres measured over 2 meters in diameter and weighed upwards of 15 tons. The smallest could be held in one hand. What makes them extraordinary is not just their size, but their perfection. Many are so close to true spherical form that even modern instruments struggle to detect deviation. Imagine shaping granite or gabbro, a stone harder than steel, without advanced machinery. These ancient craftsmen worked with hammerstones, fire, and sand, slowly grinding and shaping for months, perhaps years, to achieve results that rival what we can accomplish today with diamond-tipped tools. The spheres have been dated to between 500 and 1500 CE during the pre-Columbian era of Costa Rica. This places them within the cultural horizon of the Diquís people, a society that flourished in the southern region of the country. Little is known about this civilization. They left no written records, and much of their oral tradition vanished during the Spanish conquest, but the spheres remain as their silent testimony. Some were found in association with ancient settlements, plazas, and burial grounds. Others were placed along pathways or arranged in lines pointing toward mountains, rivers, or celestial bodies.
Archaeologists believe they once marked social, political, or religious significance, perhaps symbols of power, used by chiefs to display their authority. To create a perfect sphere from unforgiving stone would have required not just skill, but also immense labor and organization. This suggests a structured society with specialized craftsmen and leaders who commanded both resources and vision. Yet, even with this context, the mystery deepens. For while we can trace the spheres to the Diquís culture, we cannot fully explain their purpose. Were they territorial markers, astronomical instruments, ritual symbols of the sun, moon, or eternity? Some researchers argue that their placement aligns with cosmological beliefs, linking human life to the heavens. Others see them as emblems of social prestige, the ancient equivalent of monuments or statues designed to awe and impress. Adding to the enigma, many spheres have been displaced. Over the decades, they were rolled into gardens, shipped to museums, or left abandoned in fields. The original alignments that might have revealed their purpose were often destroyed by agricultural expansion. What we see today is only a fragmented picture, a puzzle with many missing pieces. In 2014, UNESCO declared the stone spheres and their archaeological sites a World Heritage Treasure, recognizing them as unique cultural artifacts. This designation reflects not only their beauty, but also their importance as a window into pre-Columbian societies of Central America. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the temples of Mesopotamia, these stones are not structures of grandeur, but symbols of subtle mastery, testimonies to a people who shaped the hardest of materials into objects of timeless perfection. But there is another layer of mystery that continues to spark debate. How did the Diquís people transport these massive stones? Some quarries identified are miles away from where the spheres were discovered. Without wheels, without beasts of burden, how could a pre-industrial society move multi-ton objects through dense forests and uneven terrain? Were logs used as rollers? Were waterways employed? Or is there some forgotten technique, an ingenuity we can only imagine, that allowed these spheres to be moved with surprising ease? Even more intriguing is the question of symbolism. In cultures across the world, the sphere has always held profound meaning. It represents unity, eternity, perfection, and the cosmos. From the sun and moon to the concept of the divine, spherical forms are universal metaphors. Did the Diquís people tap into the same ancient archetype? Were these stones their way of embodying the eternal order of the universe? Or did they serve as markers of power, a chief's proclamation that his authority was as complete and unbreakable as the perfect circle? The truth remains elusive. For now, the stone spheres of Costa Rica remain not only an archaeological treasure, but also one of humanity's enduring riddles, a reminder that even in the age of satellites and supercomputers, there are mysteries rooted in the Earth itself that defy explanation. And so, standing before these silent orbs, we are confronted with the essence of archaeology, fragments of the past whispering across time, asking us questions we may never fully answer.
To understand the stone spheres of Costa Rica, we must try to imagine the world of the Diquís people, the ancient civilization that carved them. Picture this: dense tropical forests stretching endlessly across the land, rivers glistening under the sun, and villages built on cleared plazas where life revolved around agriculture, rituals, and community. It was a world without wheels, without iron, without written records. Yet in this lush environment, a society flourished with the ambition to shape the unyielding stone into something eternal. Archaeologists believe the Diquís organized their villages around central plazas, often elevated slightly from the surrounding terrain. Here, the stone spheres were sometimes discovered in deliberate arrangements, lines, triangles, and even clusters that hinted at symbolic meaning. Imagine entering one of these villages as an outsider. You walk into the plaza, and there, perfectly aligned, are several massive stone orbs gleaming in the daylight. They do not tell stories like hieroglyphs, nor do they hold practical function like tools.
Instead, they radiate authority. They whisper silently, "This place belongs to someone powerful." Some researchers suggest the spheres were political symbols. Chiefs may have commissioned them as a sign of their dominance, much like medieval kings raised castles or Renaissance nobles filled their halls with statues. The larger the sphere, the greater the prestige. It was not just a stone, it was a statement. But the mystery deepens when we consider their craftsmanship. The Diquís did not have metal chisels, yet they carved spheres from some of the hardest rocks in the region, such as gabbro, granodiorite, and limestone. To achieve such symmetry, they likely employed a method of heating the rock with fire, then cooling it rapidly with water to fracture it. They would then grind the surface with sand and hammerstones, smoothing it over months, perhaps years. The patience required is staggering. Why would a society dedicate such immense labor to create objects that did not provide food, shelter, or direct survival benefits? Here is where myth enters the story. Local legends whisper that the spheres once held magical properties. Some say they were the weapons of the gods, petrified into stone after great battles. Others believe they were cosmic symbols, embodying the sun, the moon, or even the universe itself. And indeed, when you look at one, perfectly round against the irregular chaos of the jungle, you can't help but feel it radiates something otherworldly. There is also the possibility that the spheres served as markers of sacred space. In many ancient cultures, geometry was more than mathematics. It was spiritual. Circles represented cycles, life, death, rebirth. They represented the heavens, the eternal order, the unbroken whole. Could it be that the Diquís arranged these spheres to align with the stars, turning their plazas into miniature models of the cosmos? Some archaeologists have suggested alignments with solstices and celestial events, though the evidence is fragmentary, complicated by the fact that many spheres have been moved from their original positions. Yet imagine the possibility, a priest or shaman standing in the plaza at dawn, the rising sun casting shadows from the stone spheres in perfect alignment with a mountain peak or a river bend. The spheres may not have been mere ornaments. They may have been part of a larger cosmic performance, a reminder that human life is woven into the cycles of the universe. Still, the most striking quality of the spheres is their sheer silence. They do not tell us why they exist. They do not reveal their maker's intentions. They leave us with questions. And in this silence lies their power. Because when we stand before them, we are forced to confront our ignorance. The Diquís people themselves disappeared long before the Spanish arrived in Costa Rica. Their villages were abandoned, their traditions forgotten. Disease, conquest, and time erased their voices. What remains are these orbs, mute witnesses to a civilization we barely understand. And perhaps that is the most haunting aspect. The spheres are not only objects, but also the last guardians of a vanished people. For archaeologists, this mystery is both frustrating and tantalizing. It invites speculation, debate, and wonder. Were the spheres tools of astronomy, measuring time and seasons? Were they territorial boundary stones, declaring ownership over the fertile valleys of the Diquís Delta? Were they part of rituals meant to connect the people with gods, ancestors, or the cosmos? Or were they all these things at once? A multi-layered symbol whose meaning cannot be reduced to a single explanation. And then, of course, there are the more speculative theories, the ones that push beyond conventional archaeology. Some fringe researchers claim the spheres are remnants of an advanced lost civilization, or even evidence of extraterrestrial contact. After all, the perfection of their geometry seems almost too advanced for their time. Could prehistoric humans have inherited knowledge from a forgotten source, a lost Atlantis of Central America? While mainstream science rejects these ideas, they linger in the imagination, fueled by the very fact that so much about the spheres remains unknown. At the core of the mystery lies a paradox. The spheres are at once simple and profound. They are nothing but stone, shaped into a round form. And yet, in their roundness, they embody something eternal, the perfection of the circle, the symbol of infinity. The Diquís might have understood something we too often forget, that sometimes the greatest monuments are not those that shout loudly of their purpose, but those that remain enigmatic, forever stirring the imagination. So as we stand before these ancient orbs, polished by hands long turned to dust, we are left to wonder, did the Diquís leave them as a message for the future? Were they saying, we were here, we dreamed, we reached for the eternal? The Costa Rican spheres remind us that history is not a straight line of progress, but a tapestry woven with mysteries, enigmas, and forgotten wisdom. They force us to confront the uncomfortable truth. We do not know everything about our ancestors. And perhaps we never will.
The deeper we look into the mystery of the Costa Rican stone spheres, the more we realize that archaeology is not about finding definitive answers. It is about learning to live with questions. Scholars, adventurers, and storytellers have debated these orbs for decades, and while some explanations have gained weight, none has closed the case entirely. Let us begin with the scientific debates. Archaeologists generally agree that the spheres were created by the Diquís culture between 500 and 1500 CE, but beyond that, opinions diverge. Some researchers argue that the spheres were primarily status symbols. They were expressions of authority, crafted and placed in prominent areas to remind everyone of a chief's power. This interpretation makes sense. Monuments throughout human history often serve such purposes, from the colossal statues of Easter Island to the pyramids of Egypt. In this view, the spheres are less about function and more about presence. Yet, others push for a cosmological interpretation. They note that several spheres were found in lines or groups that might have been aligned to cardinal directions, river courses, or celestial events like solstices. Could these have served as calendars, tools to track the passage of seasons in a land where agriculture depended on understanding rainfall and climate? The evidence is thin, but the possibility lingers. Then there is the archaeological frustration. Many spheres have been moved from their original settings. During the 20th century, wealthy landowners rolled them into gardens as ornaments, museums relocated them for display, and construction projects displaced them without record. This disruption means we have lost vital clues about their original arrangement. What if their placements once told a story, an encoded map of the heavens, or a symbolic blueprint of the Diquís cosmos? That story may now be lost forever. Beyond academia lies the realm of speculation, and here the debates grow even fierier. Some suggest the spheres are remnants of a lost civilization, more advanced than the Diquís. The argument goes like this. How could a pre-industrial society create such geometric perfection without metal tools or precise measuring devices? This school of thought often invokes Atlantis or other vanished cultures said to have possessed extraordinary knowledge before fading from history. Others leap further still, invoking extraterrestrials. To them, the spheres are not just artifacts, but messages from beyond, a sign that ancient humans were visited, instructed, or inspired by beings from the stars. The perfection of the spheres, combined with their mysterious purpose, fuels such claims. Of course, mainstream archaeology dismisses these ideas as pseudoscience, pointing out that human ingenuity is often underestimated. After all, the ancient Egyptians built pyramids with copper chisels and manpower, the Polynesians navigated vast oceans without compasses, and the Mayans charted the skies with astonishing accuracy. Why shouldn't the Diquís also have achieved wonders in their own way? Still, the spheres occupy a curious middle ground. They are not as famous as the pyramids or Stonehenge, yet they provoke similar awe. They lack inscriptions or carvings, yet they whisper of a lost language of symbols. They are silent, yet they speak volumes about the human drive to create, to mark the world with meaning. One of the greatest puzzles is their sheer number. Scholars estimate that over 300 spheres have been discovered, ranging from tiny handheld ones to giants weighing many tons. The effort required to create even one would have been enormous,
Why so many? Did each family, each community strive to have their own? Or were they produced centrally, under the direction of leaders who sought to scatter their symbols of power across the land? The scale hints at a society deeply invested in these objects, not as curiosities, but as central to their worldview. We might compare them to the Moai statues of Easter Island, giant stone heads that also required immense labor and carried deep spiritual meaning. Like the spheres, the Moai are both symbols of power and mystery, and like the spheres, their true significance remains debated. Human beings, it seems, have always been compelled to shape stone into symbols of permanence, even when the practical benefit is unclear. There is also the question of movement. The largest spheres weigh as much as a truck. How are they transported from quarries to plazas? Some archaeologists suggest the use of wooden rollers, levers, or sleds. Others argue that the Diquís could have moved them by raft along rivers. Yet, without written records, we can't know for sure. The logistics themselves speak of communal effort and organization, hundreds of people working together for a goal that went beyond mere survival. And perhaps that's the most important point. The spheres remind us that prehistoric humans were not merely struggling for food and shelter. They were dreamers, artists, philosophers. They invested in symbols, in meaning, in objects that connected them to something larger than themselves. The spheres are evidence that human evolution is not only about tools and technology, it's about imagination, ritual, and the search for transcendence. The debates will likely never end. Were the spheres political emblems, cosmic models, territorial markers, or spiritual symbols? Perhaps they were all these things at once. Perhaps their meaning shifted over centuries, evolving as societies do. What is certain is that they carried profound importance for the people who made them. And yet, here we are, centuries later, still staring at them in wonder. The spheres remain mute, refusing to yield their secrets. They remind us that archaeology doesn't always provide closure. Sometimes it opens doors into the unknown, leaving us to stand at the threshold, humbled by the vastness of human mystery. In this way, the stone spheres of Costa Rica belong to the same category as the Nazca lines in Peru, the megaliths of Karnak, or the standing stones of Britain. They are the fingerprints of lost civilizations, testaments to cultures whose voices have faded, but whose creations endure. And maybe, just maybe, that was their purpose all along: to endure, to outlast their makers, to stand as eternal witnesses, reminding future generations that we are not the first to seek meaning in stone.
The stone spheres of Costa Rica may seem like a distant curiosity, objects left behind by a people long gone, their meaning lost to time. But if we pause and look closer, these ancient creations carry lessons that resonate far beyond archaeology. They remind us not only of the ingenuity of prehistoric humans, but also of the deeper currents that flow through the story of human evolution and civilization. At first glance, the spheres appear impractical. They do not provide food, water, or shelter. They cannot be wielded as tools. And yet, entire communities devoted immense effort to their creation. This tells us something vital. Human beings have always sought more than mere survival. From the dawn of time, we have been meaning makers. We have painted cave walls when there was no necessity to do so, built towering pyramids long after our bellies were full, and aligned stones to the stars when the practical harvest was already secured. The Costa Rican spheres remind us that to be human is not only to survive, but to seek beauty, order, and connection with the eternal. In this way, they mirror our own age. Today, we build skyscrapers, launch satellites, and create digital worlds. Some of these serve obvious functions, but many are acts of expression, symbols of our desire to leave a mark. Like the Diquís people, we pour energy into monuments not because they sustain our bodies, but because they sustain our spirits.
They anchor us to something larger than the fleeting span of a human life. There is also a lesson in humility. For centuries, the spheres lay hidden beneath soil and forest, unknown to the modern world. Their makers believed in something so strongly that they created objects meant to endure, even if their own voices were silenced. And endure they did. The spheres outlasted their civilization, the conquest, and the passing of generations. They now stand before us as guardians of memory. The question is, what will we leave behind? Consider our modern symbols, our glass towers, our glowing screens, and our sprawling cities. How much of this will endure 1,000 years from now? What artifacts will future archaeologists unearth, and what will they say about us? The spheres challenge us to think about permanence versus impermanence. The Diquís carved eternity into stone, while much of what we create today is fragile, fleeting, or disposable. Perhaps their lesson is a call to build not only for the present, but for the future, to create things that can carry meaning across time. Another reflection lies in the very form of the sphere. In almost every culture, the circle and sphere represent wholeness, unity, and eternity. Our ancestors were captivated by this form, perhaps because it mirrors the cosmos itself, the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth. In a way, the Diquís spheres are a silent meditation on the universal. They remind us that our ancestors were not ignorant or primitive. They were thinkers and dreamers who grappled with the same cosmic questions we ask today. Where do we come from? Why are we here? What lies beyond? This sense of connection across time is powerful. When we stand before a sphere carved 1,000 years ago, we are standing in a dialogue with the past. The hands that shaped it are gone, but their intention, their effort, their meaning still radiates from the stone. It reminds us that history is not simply about progress or linear advancement. It is about the continuity of human longing, the longing to belong, to express, to understand. And yet there is also a cautionary lesson. The Diquís civilization disappeared. Their language, their customs, their stories, all were silenced, absorbed, or erased during the tide of conquest. What survives are mute stones. This forces us to ask what aspects of our own world are fragile, what parts of our culture may vanish, leaving behind only fragments for future generations to puzzle over. The spheres are a mirror, showing us the fragility of human achievements and the resilience of symbols. We can even take this further. In an age of climate change, technological upheaval, and global uncertainty, the spheres remind us of perspective. Civilizations rise and fall, monuments are built and abandoned. The earth swallows what we leave behind, and yet humanity continues. Just as the Diquís once faced the challenges of survival and identity, so too do we. Their spheres encourage us to think not only about how we live, but also about what legacy we wish to leave behind. There is also a spiritual dimension. Imagine the Diquís community gathered in their plaza, the firelight flickering across the polished curve of a stone sphere. For them, it may have represented the sun, the cycle of life, or the eternal presence of ancestors. For us, it may serve as a reminder that meaning is not given, it is created. We too carve our spheres, whether through art, science, or storytelling. The question is, are we creating with intention, or are we carving blindly? Finally, the spheres remind us of wonder. In a world where satellites map the Earth and algorithms predict our behavior, we often believe that mysteries no longer exist. But the spheres whisper otherwise. They remind us that even in an age of data, there are questions that elude us, secrets that humble us, mysteries that make us pause and marvel. And maybe that is their greatest gift. They pull us back into the ancient human condition of awe. So what do we take from this? that our ancestors were not so different from us, that meaning matters, that legacy matters, that symbols endure, and that mystery is not a failure of knowledge, but a spark for imagination. The stone spheres of Costa Rica, silent and perfect, invite us to reflect not only on the past, but on ourselves and on the civilizations yet to come.
In the steaming jungles of Costa Rica, hidden for centuries beneath soil and silence, the stone spheres endure. They do not crumble easily. They do not explain themselves. They simply remain, perfect, enigmatic, timeless. And in their presence, we are reminded that the story of humanity is not a straight line of progress, but a labyrinth of wonders, riddles, and forgotten voices. The spheres tell us that prehistoric humans were not just survivors of their environment, but architects of meaning. The Diquís people carved geometry out of granite, shaping the eternal form of the sphere with patience that defies imagination. They arranged them in plazas, aligned them with landscapes, and imbued them with significance we can still sense, though we cannot fully decipher. Were they symbols of power, cosmic maps, ritual objects, or all of these at once? We may never know. And yet, in that uncertainty lies their power, because the mystery of the Costa Rican spheres forces us to confront something profound. We do not know everything about our past. For all our technology, for all our satellites and laboratories, the human story is still full of gaps. Gaps where imagination, curiosity, and humility must step in. This is what makes archaeology so compelling. It is not merely about collecting artifacts. It is about touching the edges of human experience, about listening to the whispers of ancestors who speak not with words, but with stone. The spheres are not puzzles to be solved once and for all. They are conversations across time, asking us to reflect on what it means to be human. And when we reflect, we see ourselves. Like the Diquís, we too are driven to build, to create, to leave behind symbols of who we are. Their spheres were their legacy. Our skyscrapers, satellites, and digital archives are ours. But what will endure? What will remain when centuries have passed, when our voices fade and our cities crumble? What fragments will the future inherit, and what will they wonder about us? Perhaps that is why the stone spheres feel so haunting. They are not only relics of the past, but mirrors of our future. They remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but symbols endure. They remind us that mystery is not a void, but a spark, a force that pushes us to seek, to dream, to imagine. And so as we conclude this journey, the question is not simply, what are the stone spheres of Costa Rica? The deeper question is, what do they awaken in us? Do they stir our awe? Do they humble us? Do they remind us that, despite all our knowledge, we are still children before the great mysteries of time? The spheres remain silent, but their silence is not empty. It is an invitation to wonder, to imagine, and to continue the search, not only for the lost civilizations of the past, but for the hidden truths within ourselves. So now I turn the question to you. What do you believe the stone spheres were meant to represent? Were they symbols of power, maps of the stars, or messages meant for future generations like us? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this mystery alive together. If you found yourself captivated by this journey into humanity's forgotten past, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us on the next expedition into the ancient secrets of our world. Because one truth remains certain. As long as mysteries endure, the human spirit will never stop seeking answers.